Our ancestors made sense of reality by telling each other stories of their gods.
This is our attempt to bring those tales back to life.
Prometheus and the creation of mankind. It was a time of peace for we gods on Olympus. No more war, no more fear under a tyrant's hand. And yet, Zeus, our ruler, has not proven himself to be the leader I had once thought. I was beginning to doubt my loyalty with the events of his first wife, Metis. For with her loss, the faces of my fallen family came back. Iapetus, my father, a hard-headed brute like my brothers after him, Monetius and Atlas. I can recall their screams as their bodies faded and the light of their souls remained. The last glint of them as they fell into the darkness, into Tartarus. If only they had listened to me when they had the chance. But that is the past, and I must look to the future. Athena, the new daughter of Zeus, was a great persuader on his behalf, for she beguiled the court, set them all at ease once more. With her words and presence, peace was restored, but my fears were not as easily swept away. They would not leave me when Zeus called for Epimetheus and myself, but it was nothing sinister at all. Zeus shook our hands and swept us with warm smiles to the balcony that overlooked the lands below Olympus. There he set us a task, a great one, for our loyalty in the war. The earth was quite barren, and we gods had grown bored, so he devised a plan to entertain us all and populate our beloved grandmother. Our kingly cousin asked for us to create all life which would inhabit this earth, save some of the creatures of the sea, for the children of Pontus and Thalassa needed brethren. And what an honor indeed. Finally, a challenge to sink our minds and hearts into. My brother and I eagerly went to the forges of Mount Olympus. We gathered the tools with the aid of the Cyclopes and went down to earth. We gods exist on a different plane than the mortals would, so we went to the source, that which would be their home. And we got to work. We collected the muds and clays, waters from rivers and the ocean. I sat with the raw materials and thought, conjuring blueprints for creatures and species all in my own mind. For I, Prometheus, am the Titan of forethought. This is what I do best. For I shall see their needs and futures and craft accordingly. But my brother, sweet nervous Epimetheus, he rushed ahead as he always does. My brother, the Titan of afterthought, tried his best to counteract his own godly gifts. He shaped and worked away at the clay immediately, not stopping to think for a moment. He grabbed from the multitude of gifts we had to give, and used them with abandon. He fashioned the lions with claws and teeth. That would be enough. But he gave them furs and great manes to warm them, and such speed that could have been granted to others. He gave strength and size to elephants, but also tusks and memory. He gave beautiful song, bright feathers and flight, all to birds. Regenerative limbs and shifting chameleon scales and cold blood to lizards. and oh, the variations of each he made. So wide he would make a mistake, miss something important, and leave them defenseless due to his afterthought. He had soon made hundreds and thousands of animals, mammals, insects, reptiles, invertebrates, amphibians. It took him days, working endlessly, as if in a fever. All whilst I sat with the clays and waters, deep in thought over the design of the perfect creature, and how to balance all the gifts. I did not mind Epimetheus working away on his animals until he knocked on my door, waking me from my thoughts. He could not look me in the eye and was playing with his hands, unable to stand still. He took me to his workshop, and there, on the work table, the box that held all the gifts we had to give. It was empty. Bare, with nothing left. And I had not yet begun to work on the final creation, man himself. I was furious with him and stormed out, ready to hit him for his selfishness, his lack of sight biting us both again in the process. But really, I knew. I should have seen this coming. I knew my fool of a brother. Perhaps that is why I did not hit him then. I just left. For I was too wrapped up in the idea of a perfect creation to stop my brother from wasting every single gift. I went back to my own workshop, but I took my anger and got to work. I took water and mud, mixing it together to make a big batch of clay. I then took a brick and wet my hands, digging into the slimy flesh, moulding and shaping, carving away excess. As I worked it away piece by piece, I saw him, not only in my mind, but in the clay. I scraped and gouged out pieces, smoothed and refined. First, I made the bare bones, all separate pieces, but carved just so, and they work as one. Then came the muscles layered over, holding the bones and shaping them. I fashioned organs and blood vessels, nervous systems, and brains. And as I layered the delicate skin, stretching over it all, covering all of my arduous work, they became things of beauty, all different varieties, shapes and colours, each like a son to me. For this race of men are all my creation, made by my hands. And as they lay in my workshop, they all looked to be asleep, already alive in my eyes. But then I took them as they were, naked, clawless creatures, bare and defenseless. Why should my creation be so vulnerable to his? Because of his mistakes. They had one gift that the animals did not. I gave them the image of the gods. To walk on hind legs. It was all I could think to give them. Not a true gift, but I felt more for them than I did any other creature. In some, I had features that resembled them, my family, Atlas, Menetius, my lost brothers, and even parts of my father, hidden in the faces of men. And as a true artist, I could not help but leave a piece of myself reflected in them also. They would think, be able to reason as we gods do, but nowhere near as well, of course. For they are but clay and water, and we are divine. It still did not feel enough. I sat in the sunlight, just looking at the husks that would be mortals soon, and felt inept. I thought of what could possibly help them when there were no gifts to give, until the sun burned hot on my neck. An idea came to me, but it would have to wait until they were alive. The next day we reported to Zeus before the court. All we would need is the sacred breath of life to complete the project he had assigned. The court oohed and ahed at the secret surprise their king had prepared. In delight, he declared his new daughter Athena would go and see to the final touches with us before a feast in a few days' time. For Zeus announced the week-long feast, where we three, Zeus, Prometheus, and Epimetheus, would present the world of mortals to the gods. A new era of peace, prosperity, and life for all. These new creatures would serve to live, to entertain us, to exist within the great universe we rule, and to love and worship us, their creators and guardians. Exciting them all when Zeus spoke of the sacrifice to be presented at the feast, a great bull divided in two, that which would declare the best sacrifice for the gods from then until the end of time. They all cheered and clapped as we left back to Earth to our workshops. Athena followed behind us, a triumphant smile on her face. Anyone could see she was glowing with pride at one of her first tasks from her father, desperate to make him proud. She seemed impressed by our creations, studying and asking questions about each. She listened to Epimetheus, list different elements and worries he had tried to prevent with each of his creations, and let him ramble on when they rose with her breath. Moving for the first time, he was quiet only when watching their first moments in life, in awe at the mortal things he made. Finally, after a long 2 days, Athena came to my workshop. The sun was setting as she looked over at man.
These are intricate creatures, Prometheus. Of all I have seen, these are the most strange to me. They walk like us, think like us, but they are so vulnerable. I must ask, why have you done this? Will they not struggle with the other beings on this earth?
Yes, I suppose they would, but I would not leave them as defenseless as you may think. My creatures, my poor creatures, do not deserve that. With the skills I have given them and a final gift once they wake, I believe my creatures will survive, perhaps even thrive in this world.
But why not fashion them like Epimetheus's? That would be the fairest option. Do you not think?
If you must know, my creations had the worst odds, but I believe in them. Now, if you would be so kind, I wish to see them live before the feast.
Of course. I hope they succeed as you seem to think, Prometheus. Do not tell your brother, but I prefer your creatures over his, apart from this one bird. Its eyes spoke to me something strange. An owl was what he called it. Fascinating creature. But to work.
She shook her head, walked to the first clay man, and took a deep breath. Her breath, imbued with the essence of life, filled the whole statue. Every inch of it was filled on the inside, and as the breath left the clay, I heard the heart begin to beat. Its skin transformed, and all at once, its blood was pumping. All organs began working. It took its own first deep breath and opened his eyes for he was alive. By the time the feast came, all of earth had animals across it, and men scattered around. But they were thriving, fighting back against any creature they came across, for I had taught them of fire. The men were able to see in the dark, hunt and cook. Against all odds, my creations were winning over Epimetheus's, and I was proud, ready to show the gods of our new world. Zeus and the court of Titans and Olympians gathered at Mycone. All the gods were on the plane of mortals, so we may see them, but they also may see us. Poseidon and Hades were at Zeus's side. Here Hestia and Demeter gathered with the Titanesses, my wife and son with them in the crowd. They all drank ambrosia and sat at a grand table, with the fruits and meats of the new world cooked in piles, stacked around them. A great roaring fire in the middle of the festival. Athena stood with Epimetheus and I, as we showed the gods our work. Mammals, insects, reptiles, invertebrates, amphibians, and then finally, man. The gods were fascinated with each different variety and how they worked. The balance and cycle of life itself. How one eats one, that eats another, and so on, as life would be for mortals. The gods applauded the genius. But none received more renown than my creation, men themselves. Even more were impressed with their survival, until I spoke of their knowledge of fire. Some of the court laughed, some smiled. But Zeus was not smiling when I looked at him. Epimetheus called over the tension. The time for sacrifice had approached. I swallowed and felt the chill on my neck grow. Zeus cleared his throat as the great bowls were brought before him. This moment would set the Lord on sacrifice to the gods hereafter. We immortals need not to eat. We exist on different realms, but we enjoy tasting. Whatever the mortals burn in sacrifice will be brought to our realm for us to enjoy. But the same cannot be said for mortals, which these gods do not yet understand. What we consume for pleasure, they need for necessity. Which is why this moment is crucial for my creatures, and it is why I prepared the bowls. Zeus wished only the best for himself and the gods. One bowl before him had the hide of the bull's belly. It looked tough and worn. The other had a glistening pile of sweet fats. And Zeus chose the bowl of fat, the seemingly biggest portion. For when the fat hit his lips, he crunched down on brittle bones and no meat. It was then I pulled the hide off the other bowl, and the succulent meat of the animal was revealed. I passed the bowl to the men and took my place with the gods. Zeus's eyes crackled with rage and burnt a hole in my skull. He gulped his ambrosia down in one swig, and hush fell over the crowd. He chuckled. "Prometheus, what a jest you have pulled." He smiled at me, but it did not dampen the fury in his eyes. Zeus continued. "And what love you show for your little mud people. But, because your trick was ingenious, I shall not change the rules of sacrifice. It is fair after all. Forevermore, we gods shall receive the fat, the bones, and the entrails. Your Men shall have the best meats, but I must ask." He nonchalantly raised his hand and clicked his fingers. A silent wind blew out every fire in the feast, and as I listened, each campfire or torch across the world went out. What shall they cook it with now that they have no fire? I searched their minds, and he had stripped the knowledge of fire from every last one of them. I did not return with the other gods when they returned to Olympus. My wife, the Oceanid, Hesione Pronoa, and my son, Deucalion, went back to court with them. But Epimetheus and I stayed among the mortal beings. It had been a week or so since the feast, and I had not slept a wink. I sat up and watched them, my creations, mankind, as they shivered and hid, ran and starved. Without fire, they were no match for the great predators my brother had forged. Every pain I saw them endure, I felt in my own being. I had tried to save them, and in doing so, only left them more vulnerable than before, punished for my mistakes and inadequacies. The men ate raw flesh and picked at the berries they could find, but they were a husk of their former selves, and a failure in my eyes. All potential stripped from them before they could even begin, and in the days of my unending watch, my anger at Zeus grew. Who was he to hold them back from all they could be? They could be our greatest asset, and the current ruler of the universe is not without fault. So who is he to judge my men? I could not let his order stand. I could not. So as I watched my creations, I thought of a plan and I waited. Watching mankind, but also the skies of Olympus. And fate was on my side. For the mighty Zeus leapt from his palace into the sky, transforming himself into an eagle. He flew off into the night. I used my godly powers to bend the light around me. I was essentially invisible, if you were not looking too hard. Any god could spot me, but I was not trying to trick a god that night. I made my way up to the mountain of Olympus, easily in the dark, for I knew this place, and they were not expecting me. It was all too easy to sneak into the great forge of Olympus, the workshop of the Cyclopes, one day to be inhabited by Hephaestus, but he is yet to be born. The Cyclops were sleeping soundly down in the hall, and the corridors were quiet, for this part of the castle was less frequented, especially at night. The divine flames bathed the room in a warm glow, flickering gently with the cooling night breeze. The fires danced, the embers mesmerizing in the dark. Zeus had wiped the knowledge of fire from them. Even if I had made a fire and shown them, as I did the first time, they would not remember. But the sacred flames would restore it all. My king had forbidden any to give mortals fire, but I had no regret, as I reached into the forges, grasping at the flames with my bare hands. They crackled and scorched my skin, but I did not feel it. I slipped the embers into a hollow fennel stalk I had bought, using my powers to seal it inside, but keep it alive. When the door behind me shut with a soft click, I whipped around, thrusting the stalk behind my back, only to see Athena standing there.
You should not be here.
Why not? This is a workshop, and I am a creator. This is the perfect place for me to be. Do you not think so?
You should not be in here doing what you are doing.
What am I doing, young goddess? I am not doing anything, just standing.
Do not take me for a fool, Prometheus. I know what you have stolen.
Then wait and listen to me.
Why should I?
Because you care for them too. I know you do. You are right. You are no fool, Athena. But you also know this is not right. It is not fair. She stays silent, but does not move to leave or to take it from me. They are cold, alone, defenseless. The men eat raw meat and cannot survive without this. You know it is wrong not to help them.
I cannot help you.
That is not what I ask. Just do not stop me from helping them. Give me one night, and I shall face whatever may come alone. No one need ever know you were here. She backed away, opened the doors, and left, leaving it wide open. I did not hesitate to accept the gift and run from the mountain as fast as I could. That night I walked across the lands, searching cave after cave, finding the naked shivering men, and igniting fires for each of them, all from the hollow fennel stalk and the great fire of the gods. When the dawn was rising, I went to my brother. Forethought is a gift and a curse, for I know the consequences I would soon face. I foresaw it all, prophetic of sight. I gave one final gift to my beloved brother. A warning should the Olympian gods come with gifts. Do not accept. They want to trap you, dear brother. Do not let them. Watch over mankind, protect them. Watch over my wife and son, and be happy. Stay safe, dear brother. He asked me all manner of questions, half asleep and half distracted by past regrets swimming in his head again. I hugged him long and walked to my workshop in the bright daylight. I already knew who would be waiting for me. My allies in war, the henchmen of Zeus, Kratos and Bia, holding heavy adamantine chains. Zeus. As I leapt into the air, I transformed myself into an eagle and flew high above the cloud. Prometheus's antics of late had been troubling, but not as important as the recurring nightmares that plagued me. Different than the nightmares I'd had with Metis and Athena, I had fought one prophecy, but it was not enough. Clearly, if I could not rid myself of this feeling, for the looming doom felt like a thorn in my side. So I travelled to seek private counsel with the grandmother once more. She had guided me through times of trouble, and the cave of my youth is often a den of received wisdom now. It is one of the only places where I am alone these days. Earth is covered with life. Such fun to watch in the days of leisure. But court was not quiet either. I am always being dragged into ever-important matters, swept from one god to the next, tending to the balance of the universe. Now, with the mortals, it is busier than ever. The cave gave me space to breathe, to think, and so I flew. I watched the mortals below me, all scattered and shivering in the dark, as it should be. Soon I came to the entrance I knew so well. Hidden from all mortal eyes, I descended the steps to the deeper level. quiet at last. I called out to the vast stone walls, covered with moss and vines. "Grandmother, I seek your answers, for I have questions that still haunt my mind. For the prophecy we have spoken of before, the one father spoke to me, and his father before him, the future son that will take my place. It cannot come to pass, but I know nothing more. You spoke once of the child of Epimetheus. I fixed it. I see now in the worst way, but it is done. But I must know, who will mother the child stronger than I?" I waited, but there was only silence. No shifting stones or plantation to reveal her face, no echo in my mind or the world around me. Just a drip of water far off filled the time. I waited, confused at her refusal to come to me. She heard me. There was no mistake there, but her consciousness remained far from here. I waited, repeating myself again. I spoke louder, asking, louder and pleading, until I was shouting with frustration, my voice booming in the empty cave. I sighed. I could make her come if I so chose, but I would not. I could force my grandmother to speak to me with power easily, but of course I would not. If she wished to remain silent, she could not do so forever. She had not forgiven me for Metis, as the rest of the court had done. If she would not speak, I would go to others. There were other titanesses with prophetic gifts, and gods that could tell me what I needed to know. I left then, as the skies were just lightening, for the sun began to rise. I thought then that she needed time, that she would forgive me soon, but was perhaps punishing me for my mistake. I flew back to Mount Olympus with my eagle's wings, so distracted by thoughts of my grandmother, of Metis, and of the prophetic sun, I did not notice the flickers of light from below me. I was almost home, almost to Olympus, when I was awoken from my thoughts, ironically blinded by thick clouds of black smoke. I finally saw what I had missed. I flew higher, and sharply turned to avoid the smoke, able to breathe and see the very cause. For the earth below me was covered with roaring flames, half of the forest blackened and charred, and the rest being engulfed and swallowed in bright bloody red. Like a monster laying waste to the land, it ate and burned at the very flesh of the grandmother. I watched as nymphs scattered. Hamadryads trapped to their trees screamed and wailed in agony as the flames destroyed them, burning their flesh and souls into ashes, perishing to the weapon I had stripped the mortals of. That is when I saw them, a gathering of two clusters. The naked apes, the mudmen. What mockery of the gods these mortals be! They threw sharpened sticks and waved torches of our divine flame. All our mortal creatures ran from them in fear, and my blood boiled. I knew immediately what fool had done this. Prometheus. He thinks me petty and cruel, but he did not see the risk, the selfishness in his want for them to be more, and my fears have been proven to all in one single night. They are not us, and never will be. We cannot give them the power to destroy others, each other, the immortals and the very grandmother. It is too much for them to comprehend. I took a deep breath and blew my winds, summoning clouds and rains down on the fires of men. More billowing smoke filled the skies as the crackling fires died into embers and ashes. I leave the disaster scene in the hands of the Nephilim and the Aurea, nymphs of clouds and skies. They stay to tend to rain clouds and stop the rest of the flames. I fly back to Olympus, a rage clouding my mind. I think of endless ways to punish the mortal men. Their folly and defiance could bring an end to us all. But they are easy to break. They are only mortal. I decided to wait, to perfect my plans to truly teach them a lesson. In doing so, I knew it would hurt the Creator that loved them so dearly. But that is not enough to satisfy me. I let Prometheus have his fun. I let him help his little mud men. I let them keep the best share for themselves. But still, he defies me. What if others think that they can do the same? Poseidon lusted for the throne once. And what of consequence? I call a summoning to Kratos and Via, and they bring the trickster to me. I sat upon my throne, thinking of all the things I could do, all manner of punishment, even sending him to join the rest of our family in the very depths of Tartarus. But one voice called out above the rest, easing my anger and pushing for restraint, for mercy. Then an idea came to me, to kill two birds with one stone. For Prometheus's foolishness, I would allow mercy in his punishment, if he would give me the answers I needed. The door burst open, and the marching feet were accompanied with the dragging of heavy chains across the stone floor. Kratos stood one side of Prometheus, and Bia on the other. They marched him into the center of the room, and I looked down upon them. Prometheus could not meet my eye, just stared at the adamantine shackles shining on his wrists. Prometheus, you have disobeyed me, your king, your ruler, for the mortals you created. You turned your back on us, on our godly duties, on the family we have just started to heal together, on the very balance of the universe. For what? Answer me that. Prometheus raised his head. His eyes were cold, his face stoic, and he spoke. I did it because it is right, because it is fair. Men need fire. It is the only way for them to survive in this world, and you know this as well as I. Now bringing the court, my king. Let us get this over with quickly. Right. Fair. You have stripped fairness from all the creatures that are not your own. You fool, Prometheus. But before your sentencing, would you not like to ease your own burden? For I have an offer, and you should not refuse me. It will not end well, for you know a deed of this weight cannot go unpunished. I know what you will ask me, my lord. I have seen it, and I know of the prophecy that ails you, that haunts you. But I shall not give you the answers you seek. I know what I did for man was right, even if you do not. I accept the punishment you shall give me. But I will stand before you again, Zeus. This is not the end. For mankind, or I. I clenched my jaw and squeezed the grip of my throne before taking a deep breath. It is clear we can no longer see eye to eye, my old ally. I let your jest with the sacrifice go unpunished, but the power fire holds I cannot trust in mortal hands, no matter if man cannot fend for himself. For this was your task, Prometheus, to keep the balance between animals. You cannot give them that which is not yours to give, because of your own feelings. I must ask you, for the fate of our world is at stake. Who will father a child greater than I? Come, Prometheus. I must know, and I will not ask again. My patience has run too thin. I shall not tell you, not whilst I remain in chains. I am sorry, Zeus, but I have no more words for you. The anger I had felt, the frustration that had grown, simply melted into great disappointment. I had no choice, for if the court saw his utter defiance go unpunished, who knows what would occur? I sighed. Without this excuse to spare him, I had no choice. I summoned the court, the hall filled with gods and goddesses, all staring at Prometheus, whispers of the men and the damage of fire. The destruction and progress that was already beginning in his naked apes were all I heard in the chatter, until I stood from my throne. All eyes on me, the room was silent. All present have become aware of the crimes committed last night. It is with a heavy heart that I, Zeus, ruler of Olympus, decree Prometheus a trickster and traitor, defying my command to keep the knowledge of fire from men. You have seen the duties of the gods, and abandoned them in favor of your mortal men. In your love for them, you have doomed all other life on earth, for they have no choice now that your precious men dominate. You place the weapon in their hands, without fear of your king's and court's own wrath. Gods and goddesses, I offered our Prometheus clemency, mercy, even forgiveness, but he threw that gift back in my face. It pains me to do my duty, but my duty must be done. Prometheus, for your disloyalty and treacherous acts, you shall be banished from court henceforth. You shall be chained forevermore to the mountains of Caucasus. You shall have no rest, no sleep, no moment's respite. You shall waste the eons of time given immortals with nothing but rock and pain as your companions. Kratos, Vir, take him out of my sight! You are all dismissed. I sat back as Kratos and Vir dragged him from his kneeling position and pushed him out of the doors. The crowds filtered out as I sat back on my throne, the eyes of an Oceanid meeting mine. Pronoia, Prometheus's wife, holding a young boy's hand. They mixed into the thick crowds of nymphs and deities, all scurrying from the main hall. With Prometheus gone, I asked there Phoebe and Asteria, titanesses with some prophetic wisdom, for answers of any kind, anything that would steer me away from the creation of a son more powerful, more cruel. But none knew. They could see the prophecy, the child that would bring doom, but all information on the mother was clouded from them. I had run out of options, and with nowhere to turn next. I then looked through the eyes of an eagle circling the mountains of Caucasus. It was there that I saw him. Prometheus, fastened by all limbs in the chains of adamant. The bird dove and drove its talon into the flesh of his abdomen. He cried and howled as blood and chunks came away in the beast's claws. It tore away at the skin, the layers of muscles, and feasted on fat. I felt it. Prometheus began to beg as I tasted the first bite of his liver. It was metallic, like rust. The bird tore and ate, picking at his organ, as if it were a delicacy to make last. It did not matter, though, for it would regrow, just to be consumed again tomorrow. I snapped back to my own body and walked to the balcony. I looked out onto the horizon in the direction of his mountain prison and sighed. In truth, it hurt me. My ally and friend, one of the first titans to believe in me. And how could he so easily turn against us? Against me? It was then that I was distracted by lines of smoke leading to a cluster. The naked apes had emerged from their caves, building huts together and spreading. With Prometheus now dealt with, I could devise a torture to fit them perfectly. And it shall all start with a box and a gift to all. But that is a story for another time. Living Mythology is our attempt to bring the stories of our ancestors back to life.
They explained their universe through the medium of their religions.
Their gods were not distant beings of academic study. They were living, breathing entities
that reflected the wants, needs, good and evil in the very heart of humanity.
We only wish to encourage others to study the deep and rich cultures of our forebears.
We hope you have enjoyed our labours. If so, then do consider liking and subscribing.
If you wish to support improvement in our endeavour, then we do have a Patreon as well.
Until next time, be good to all, but most especially yourself.